It came to my notice that a lot of people have no idea what exactly affects fuel consumption. So I spent almost a week trying to conduct an online research and find out true causes of excessive fuel consumption. In this video, I'm gonna talk about how bad oxygen sensor can increase fuel consumption. Also, various sensors like MAF or MAP and how thermostat can prevent engine from going closed loop. And finally, review what other YouTubers think about this topic. Okay, the first reason why your fuel consumption is increased can be a bad oxygen sensor, but to understand the science behind this, you need to know what AFR table is. AFR table is a map of desired air-fuel ratios under various operating conditions to optimize engine's performance and efficiency. So here you see an example of what AFR table looks like. We have engine RPM on x-axis and engine load on y-axis. In closed loop operation, oxygen sensor placed right after in the exhaust manifold continuously monitors oxygen levels in the exhaust and sends signal to the ECU. The ECU itself then calculates if it has to inject more or less fuel to achieve the targeted air-fuel ratio based on this kind of table. Now, if your oxygen sensor is malfunctioning, it may send an incorrect signal to the ECU, forcing it to inject more fuel than needed, causing rage conditions, excessive fuel consumptions, and a lot of smoke. Unlike the closed-loop operation as we discussed earlier, in open loop, ECU uses MAF sensor to calculate how much air is going into the engine. When starting up the engine, car operates in open loop until the coolant reaches a certain temperature and oxygen sensor heats up. Remember, O2 sensor is accurate only when it's heated to a certain temperature. Bad or dirty MAF sensor will send inaccurate information to the ECU, telling them more air is coming into the engine than it actually is. The ECU, in turn, forces injectors to inject more fuel than it actually needs, creating rage conditions and again, a lot of smoke. Another interesting reason that will absolutely cause increased fuel consumption is when the thermostat is stuck open. Thermostat regulates the temperature of coolant in the engine. When you first start the car, it should be closed, blocking the coolant from circulating through the radiator, thus allowing the engine to reach its optimum temperature as quickly as possible. Now, everybody knows an overheating engine is a bad news, but most people probably don't realize that the engine also hates the cold. Nowadays, gaps between the engine parts are really tight. That's why the engine has to be at operating temperature to perform efficiently. This is mainly about lubrication. There is a massive amount of friction involved in an internal combustion engine. Without a lubrication, an engine quickly becomes a system of fast-moving metal components grinding and seizing against each other. A stuck-open thermostat will allow the engine coolant to circulate even when the engine is still cold. It will take ages for the engine to heat up and may never even reach its operating temperature. This will prevent the ECU from going into a closed loop. Also, cars generally run richer when the engine is cold. It's because the fuel is not vaporizing inside the combustion chamber as efficiently as it should, and the ECU is trying to compensate this by adding a bit more fuel. Now, I wanna talk about the misconception that has been going on about dirty air filters. Even the guy from Driving for Answers got it wrong. Here's the quick video I want you to listen to carefully.
Now, a dirty air filter can negatively impact engine performance and fuel economy by making it harder for the engine to breathe. The dirtier the air filter, the less permeable it is. The less permeable it is, the harder it is for the engine to ingest air through it. Now, this is known as pumping losses, and all engines experience pumping losses to a greater or lesser extent. But by having a dirty filter, you can dramatically increase these pumping losses, which means that a lot of the work done by the engine is actually wasted on fighting to ingest air through a dirty filter.
Dirty air filters will not reduce the fuel economy. Sounds counterintuitive, right? But it's the truth, and here's why. In a gasoline engine, the engine's output is controlled by choking it with throttle body. It always restricts the airflow to the engine except when you put the gas to the floor. Wherever the engine airflow happens to be, it's measured by the airflow meter, which then tells the engine how much fuel to inject. A dirty fuel reduces airflow to the engine, just like a throttle. The filter and the throttle restrictions combined results in the net airflow to the engine. If you have a clean filter, you will end up using a slightly smaller throttle to accelerate at the same rate or maintain the same speed. If you have a dirty filter, you will use a deeper throttle, but in both cases, it's the net airflow that determines the amount of the fuel you burn. The engine doesn't care what is restricting its breathing, it's the throttle or it's a filter or it's both. A dirty filter will limit the maximum airflow you can get to your engine. It will reduce the maximum horsepower and torque. A dirty filter may allow you to run, let's say, 90% of your throttle, but it will be no different from putting a brick under your gas pedal such that you can't depress it fully. Zero effect on your fuel economy. Here you see a research paper done by Energy and Transportation Science Division, where they conducted an experiment on several vehicles to find out the effect of the dirty air filter and the fuel consumption. The results proved that the effect of dirty air filter was not statistically significant, and in some cases it even improved fuel economy by acting like a sort of an eco mode.